Hi everybody, B. Squecklehazen here with episode 12 of Gramercy. Sorry it's been a little while, I've been very busy trying to get FBS all sorted out. I hope you guys have really been enjoying that, it's been such a blast to make. Anyway, we start here now in this episode of Gramercy, so one that's kind of a little all over the place again, and I've been trying to avoid that, but just keep ending up making them all over the place, I guess. Because there are a bunch of projects and I really want to finish them, but they're all really small and I always get stumped by assets or just like, man, I've been trying to puzzle this one out for 2 or 3 days and just don't want to work on that. So I end up finding other things to make and whatever. But of course, in this episode titled Parkways and Pier, or Parkway and Pier, we start off at a train yard. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to start with. This is continuing from the car float from last time. I'm just fencing off the tracks, fencing off the yard, because I think I've decided that everything short of the car float is going to be an active freight service, just very, very rarely. So I want to keep the little yard over here and the roundhouse, which I'm just kind of using as a train-looking shed, I guess. And I wanted to keep these kind of, I think there's only one track. Maybe I put a second one in that actually goes into that roundhouse then. No, I think I just keep it at one. But I wanted it to look like it's still in sort of really limited service. Like it used to be a lot more when they were using the car float, when they were using all the tracks, when they were using all this stuff. And now it's just like this giant old warehouse where they used to have to keep and change like 12 locomotives and a bunch of different cars and things and make sure they were all running. Now maybe it's like 2 engines or something like that. So I go through here. I'm still adjusting that key. When I first planned out this map and first planned out this area even, I built everything way too high up. So we're getting that sorted slowly as to kind of sink things towards the ground. That becomes a problem later in the episode again, and it's going to stay a problem with Gramercy, at least with this side of it. I think when I move to the next side, I'm going to really kind of lower all the terrain across the entire map, because it's not quite as mountainous as I have it built. So right there, I figured like we'll do some oil spills. We'll put some boxes and things. I'm looking at like container stacks. Like, wait a minute, that's completely wrong. They wouldn't have the ability to stack and unstack. So just put one short little container there, just blocking the doors. Because it, again, doesn't matter. Like the tracks have been pulled up here. They're so old. I'm looking around trying to find just some cars to park out here. Now this is something I really miss about FBS. I still only have the vanilla cars installed for Gramercy just because I'm trying to keep the things that I don't think are like strictly necessary out, because I mean with FBS we can have a pretty I don't want to say concise list of assets, but like for Gramercy I want to make sure I have a decent variety of city buildings, a decent variety of skyscrapers, then suburbs, like that whole mid-density stuff. I want to make sure I can do a reasonable airport plus train yards plus. So it ends up that I don't want to have a bunch of different cars and taxis and all sorts of stuff. So sticking with the vanilla cars for now. I'm dragging in here an access road because there's an access on the other side of the roundhouse, but I realized that they'd have to like drive over tracks that I wanted to keep active, and it was just a total mess. I had another track in here just to kind of flesh out the yard slightly more, and this would have been like another or a track that didn't access the car float back in the day, so it's a struggle to make a little bit, but I end up really smoothing out the rails. So I don't know if you guys saw my tweet. This is a little bit of a tangent, but Tim the Terrible is working on some unbelievably awesome looking American rails. So I'm trying to avoid a ton of like major rail projects until those come out, so I don't have to renovate and change much, just in case geometries and things change. It's looking fantastic. Check out my Twitter for a picture of it. It's at @bsqueckle. But Tim's doing such a fantastic job with that. I'm constantly like harassing him on Discord trying to get more of it done and things made in advance, and just like, yeah, do this. Like, so I want every single type of bridge that a train has ever driven over in the history of trains made on this. Anyway, so this block that I'm working on now, I actually found a really cool block in Williamsburg in real life, right along the waterfront, that's like half old warehouses and half like construction sites. So this is that block kind of straight up. The construction site is just kind of a pit, at least that's what it was on Google Maps when I looked. Google Maps actually just updated for New York the other day, which was really exciting. So I got to go and look at a whole bunch of new buildings and things that have changed. So I have no idea what's that pit might be a finished building by now, because there were full skyscrapers that just kind of appeared on Google Maps one day. So I'm going through here now and adding a bunch of grass and tufts and things. I really love that they're terrain conforming, because this is kind of the way I imagined it and the way it looked to be on maps is that this was maybe a building stuck in construction hell, where it didn't end up being built as soon as people would like, so it got partway and the funding fell through or something like that. I'm using some of Avanya's, I think it's iron piles, iron down there, to try and like fill the hole a little bit with kind of dirt. I put one lonely little excavator in there just to fill it out. From there, I move on to the other side of Roebling over here, trying to figure out a way that I might be able to just zone some of these areas. So I'm dragging a bunch of roads, and they were slightly off in terms of tile length, so there were 2 segments when I really only wanted one. I moved a pillar out of the way there. I was just, I had to make sure I commented on it. Somebody commented on the FBS saying that we have too many pillars on highways, and I've started noticing it everywhere in Gramercy. So I'm slowly moving all these. So right here, I'm doing a bunch of mixed-use zoning, as kind of close as we can get mixed use, pegging the demand and watching it all grow along the hill. Same over here, I'm really tweaking this block to try and get big buildings to zone, so it was really weird. While I was playing the game this week for this episode, and particularly with Gramercy, it didn't happen when I was recording FBS. I ended up with a lot of like mouse lag where I'd click and then unclick, and it was such a mess. Anyway, I'm going and setting the theme and setting everything to try and grow a little bit higher here. It's really starting to look right. Like this neighborhood's kind of getting close to finished. One thing I still want to do though is, and this is getting really boring, so I'm trying to like figure out ways where it's not I don't have to do it in such bulk, but I need to add yards to more commercial buildings. And of course, every time I have an episode come out, there's more buildings. We're having some fantastic, I think they're New England buildings specifically, but they're of the right era and style to play well in New York. They're coming out of, I think Darf is making them right now. But for those, I want to open them all up and make my own yards and back gardens and back like storage areas and things. And just, that's a long time to make. So right here, this is kind of what I was talking about. I had these rocky bluffs that originally were based off the New Jersey Palisades, but they just don't fit here on the actual coast. So I'm using the terrain tool, actually trying to use the terrain ramp tool as much as I can to smooth this area out. This would have been on the ocean. It would have had a lot of erosion there. I leave some bluffs as we get further up, and I think I'm going to keep them actually because I really like the way they look, and I think they add a really nice kind of verticality to that section of the city. It's definitely something I'm going to use this area to kind of practice on before I get to the actual area that's going to be built like the New Jersey Palisades, but some of the really tall areas at Upper Manhattan. Obviously, I don't really have that much of a Manhattan in this build in Gramercy, but I do have the sort of area that I want to have. I was looking on Google Maps up on the Harlem River, and there's some amazing like 5 and 6 tier looking, like you can see all the bridges of different eras, and it goes over train tracks, and it goes over all sorts of stuff, and just it's so awesome. Right here, I'm going and building a roundabout, and I build it first using the curve tool to get a little bit extra control. And then for some reason, the curve tool, I don't actually think the curves are tremendously smooth when you use it, but with the freeform road tool, they seem to be a lot actually curvier, I guess. Like it's less of like like a rounded square and more of a genuine circle. This is actually a really cool little pier and interchange that really inspired this whole build, and inspired the construction of the Parkway that we're doing here. If anybody's familiar with the area or anything like that, this is Gramercy Pier, and I built it almost exactly, but it's right off the Belt Parkway, which is the Parkway in this episode, and I'm so happy with the way this whole thing turned out, because there was just, every time I looked at Gramercy from far away, there was definitely something missing, and as weird as it sounds, with Gramercy being like a New York City build, it was the highways. New York City has some pretty fantastic giant interchanges and things as they tried to marry like 1950s and 60s highway infrastructure with the old everything that was around it basically. And you end up with really tall bridges having to have these giant like knots to connect on each end. And then you also have a lot of these highways were planned by Robert Moses, who is a very famous urban planner for bad reasons. But he really liked the idea of parkways where you could drive and really kind of enjoy the drive. So there are these kind of really I don't want to say rural because they go through obviously New York City and a lot of suburbs, but they go through unbuilt areas. So the Belt Parkway definitely goes through some neighborhoods, but where I'm building it, it's actually on like a nice wide undeveloped portion of coastline. So it's nice and windy. It's just lanes side by side. I'm not trying to build like a super highway here, so it's only 2 lanes each direction. I think the real Belt Parkway is more. But I just really like the kind of scale width of the 2-lane highways. I think the 3-lane ones, since they're vanilla, are just a little thick. So right here, I'm building, honestly, what might be the most highway I've built in Gramercy in a long time. As I kind of wrap the Belt Parkway equivalent. I haven't named it yet. It might just be like I don't want to do Ocean Parkway. That's also a place in here. But I'm trying to think of names and things. This actually ended up being a struggle. So I had all of these very broad curves, and I had a bunch of weird problems where it would want to snap to straight rather than trying to snap to the angle and snap to near the road. So it ended up being quite a chore to try and get this all sorted out. But anyway, I loop it around and connect it to a kind of a minor road in Delancey Heights, which I'm not thrilled about. I am going to have a very cool, and I can't wait to build this or to see if I actually been talking with Flux Trans and Strict Toaster about taking on an episode as a guest sort of thing, and if they're down to build one of these interchanges. It's so cool. It's this weird, super compact, like I think it might be best described as like a asymmetrical half trumpet, half paperclip interchange. It's just this bizarre little thing to try and get people from the Belt Parkway to the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. And it's just so cool. Like, I love the way it all looks, and it's just kind of finally building this parkway really punctuated the southern edge of Gramercy. And before, I'm like, I have no idea what to do with it. But building the Belt Parkway here, or this not actually the Belt Parkway, really gave me the context, I guess, the framework to be like, okay, here's what's going to go here, here's what's going to go here. So again, for people who are familiar with New York, I've got some plans to build like Gravesend, Sheepshead Bay, Ozone Park. They're obviously going to be massively condensed because I've got this very narrow, long, skinny area that I need to build in. But I think it's still going to work and look pretty good because I really want to, and I've been looking, especially once again after FPS, I've begun really liking kind of having finished areas to show off, because Gramercy's always kind of been almost like a model train set, I guess, where everything's kind of evolving, and when I get new assets, I'll go back to old stuff, and you guys don't usually see that, so that's part of the reason why I always end up with such inconsistent episodes, is because I can't break this habit of wanting to go back to stuff I've already built and already finished to try and make improvements. So I'm like looking through, and I've got a bunch of old neighborhoods. I'm like, this could use this, this could use this. And there are also a lot of areas that I'm just, I don't want to have to do. So I've done, here's this new neighborhood with a couple avenues that are cutting through at angles and things. And that's awesome. And being able to just like zone all the stuff and build all the buildings and everything is great. But then when I'm trying to fill in awkwardly shaped block number 25 out of a total of 40 awkwardly shaped blocks, I'm just like, I'm so done. I'll come back to this later. So we'll see. I've been wanting to kind of see if I can do that busy work in streams and things, just because I don't think it's tremendously entertaining for you guys to watch, just because it's not entertaining for me to watch. Like when I watch other YouTubers and things that are just filling these weird blocks, I'm just not thrilled by it. So anyway, I've built that little trumpet interchange connecting the large avenue in Hamilton, and I just like it's so good. And it really I end up with a bunch of traffic on this parkway at the moment, which is not amazing, but I think it'll eventually sort itself out, because right now Gramercy has very few actual entrances to the city, and everything's obviously very, very condensed. So you have just the highway that represents the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, I-278, and now you have the Bay Parkway, and that's it, actually. So it used to be that everything coming into Gramercy came off of the BQE equivalent, either across the bridge or down through across the other bridge, like the sort of quote-unquote East River. I really need to come up with names for these. I know that there's the Springwood Wiki going up, and there's a lot of like community stuff. I haven't decided whether I want to like really kind of get engaged. I don't think there's a Gramercy page up yet. There might be, because I know there's one for FPS, but looking at all of that stuff, like, if you guys have any really good ideas for what to name the rivers and things, I'd really appreciate them. Just to consider, I might not like pick specifically, but we'll see. Because I'm trying to it's a very tricky balance for me because I want to try and get Gramercy to evoke New York, but not be a copy. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, here's what we'll do: the West River, not the East River. It'll go on the other side and be the West River. And I feel like that's kind of just a step too close. I was talking with some friends about what to build in this, and it's like we came across the question like, what am I going to do for Liberty Island and the Statue of Liberty? Do I put a statue out in the bay? Do I not? Is that just too much of a New York thing? Actually, if you guys have any ideas, check out the comments here and be sure to tell me what's up. I might do like a community post or something about that soon. So we'll see what ends up happening there. While I've been talking about this and just kind of yammering away, I've built this nice little pier. It's surprisingly just like real life. Like, I saw this pier, it's Gramercy Pier out in Brooklyn, and it's right on the end of this little interchange. It looks pretty much exactly like this. This was just basically an excuse to try out the new steel textured keys. So I'm going through now, and the actual pier looks like it's been renovated fairly recently with this really charming, I guess I'd say, brick pattern, which I really like. So I used it, and thank God these piers support decals on them, because I go through here and I'm making a nice decal pattern that is the width of the key to kind of cover up the bland concreteness and bland like vanilla key-ness, even though it's not a vanilla key. And I'm using Move It now to just copy and paste the sections. As you can see, Move It has this fantastic new height alignment tool that I'm just absolutely like already just totally in love with, because it lets me just align everything to the right height. So these keys, the pier is perfectly level, everything's perfectly like fits like this. Anyway, going through here now and just copying and pasting and really getting all this tile work right. And I ended up with a bit of a problem because I didn't measure it out properly. I just kind of fudged it originally. So I got some awkward space on the end here. I sorted it out by just deciding like, let's reveal some concrete here. Let's do an alternate colored tile. And I think it actually looks very, very good. It's pretty much exactly how I imagined it, exactly right. Use the concrete painter tool there just to make sure I could get these smooth lines. And now it is parking lot time. So a little bit awkwardly, the parking lot lines and bumpers follow the contour of the land. And underneath the keys, the game really wants to think that the land curves down and away. So we kind of lose the outside parking lot sections, but I like the way they look. People still park there. But I like the way that the center looks with the no parking towards the edges, because it kind of, I don't really know like why I think it looks right, but I think just the two lines of parking in the center with no cars along the edges looks right to me. Going through here, I'm using my good old nautical feeling bollards with the chains between as the fence to make sure nobody goes pitching into the ocean here. Just do a little bit of lighting and then try and figure out some PPGs to get some actual visitors. And honestly, mostly I wanted to get a bunch of visitors here so I could see that interchange in action. So once again, I'm quickly going and grabbing a bunch of benches, space them all out to be equal, use Move It, copy paste, grab some, and put them right at the end of the pier as well. Do a little bit of tweaking on that, add some greenery a little bit. This was actually done really nice and fast because everything was coming together. I was like, it was one of those times where I was just super in the zone and could just be like, yep, this is what I'll need. This will need the King Leno prop there. This will need this type of light. I know I have all these. I know exactly what to search for. I know exactly what to look for, etc. So I'm going through now and adding some PPGs to get some demand, bring some, we'll say, fishermen out here. Struggling a little bit with road connection stuff, and look at that right away, even as I'm adding like a little grill area and some food carts or whatever, which are based off what I actually saw once when I was at a pier in New Jersey and really liked. I think I bought like an Italian ice or something. We see people showing up. Now it's time to decorate this traffic circle. So it's at the end of this weird interchange that has this feature in it. And it's actually like a veterans memorial circle. So I went and found a flag with a flagpole. I really wish we had an American flag. I don't know why we don't. I know that the actual flagpoles and things are from the European DLC, but especially for a Veterans Memorial one. It felt weird being like, well, German flag, I guess, but I don't really have a choice there. I'd love an American flag if there are any asset creators. I don't know how to get the flag like animated or anything. I might try and find that out because I can't imagine it would be tremendously hard to model and make, but an American flag that like flutters in the wind like that would be such a nice thing to have. And now it is time for me to face my mortal enemy, plants, which I've just like always panicked about and scared about and have no idea what to do and where ever. But I ended up just kind of looking very, very closely at Google Maps and finding that there's this weird, like, it doesn't look actually manicured, but if you look closer, try to find patterns and things, there are a bunch of teeny tiny bushes right by the edge of the road, then larger ones slightly farther away, and then kind of like pockets and patches of other bushes and trees and things. So it ended up kind of actually making it look kind of right here. As I'm recording this right now, I just realized, like, man, a bunch of highway guardrail would really make that look more finished. But that's a project for another time then, I guess. So now I really wanted to use this new thin pathway as well. So kind of forced it in here, I guess. The real thing does have this with a actually beautiful bike path that I really want to try out next time I'm back in New York with a bike that I own and don't rent for 45 minutes at a time. But I'm trying really hard to get this bike path working, and there's just some things with this extra thin path that make it a little bit inflexible when you're putting it close to other networks. And of course, with where I'm building it, everything is close to other networks. So there's just a whole bunch of weird like terrain glitching and like weird spiky bits of concrete where the path is wide and everything. So I end up just simplifying the design a little bit from the real life one and keeping that there. And I really think it gets the right message across. Now I'm going through and using a technique that I really like using just to make the grass look a little different around. I need to go through and start changing these textures. I was thinking as I was doing this, man, it would be really nice if the fertile texture was like a beautiful, like manicured mowed lawn. I don't think I'm going to have many farms here, so getting to use that texture as like well-kept grass would be a fantastic choice, I think. So I'm going through here, and I was really hoping I'd be able to work more on that World's Fair Park there. But I ended up not being able to do too much more because whenever I look at it, it takes me such a long time to try and define the space. So I'm trying to figure out like what should go where, like how do I decorate this to make it look correct and look right. And I realized at least today's kind of very, very, very slow realization as I work on this park literally over months and months. Is that a lot of it seems to be these cool like paired baseball fields where there are multiple fields out in one area, so they both share the same outfield walls, I guess. So I built a really nice looking little baseball diamond and just kind of plop it around before I get a notification that my flight is taking off in like 2 hours. So like at this point I'm panicking. I'm just like, oh god, I gotta get this finished, I gotta get this save up, and it's just very tight. So this has actually been recorded just like literally last minute. Like I'm sitting here packed and ready to go. And I'm just gonna click render and literally take off. But anyway, I have a very special announcement for you guys as this sort of winds down and we begin to transition to cinematics. If I'm not mistaken, I've been very quickly, like literally as I was sitting down to record the commentary for this, I was thinking like, man, I wonder if I could toss an episode over to Strict Toaster and if he would be willing to do an episode for me. And I believe, and I don't quite know if this is 100% sure or not, I will keep you guys posted. But I believe he's going to do the next episode. It'll be over on his channel, a special guest episode. This assumes that I can get all the stuff working while I'm away, or he can get all the stuff working while I'm away and can provide only very limited tech support. But anyway, as we roll out here at the end of this next and last episode of Gramercy that I do for a little while, we can cross our fingers and ask very nicely for Strict Toaster to get that next episode for us. There's going to be some really cool stuff that's coming up soon. I'm excited to kind of get this Parkway in, and it's kind of been the key that's gotten me over this hump of uninspiration. So with that said, I'd like to thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.